Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio from River Road Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is brought to you by the Herbal Nerd Society.
The Herbal Nerd Society is a collection of really awesome, cool people.
Really? You always say that.
I think you say that.
Awesome and cool.
That's so funny. You say that every time.
Because they are. They're really cool people.
Yes,
I love the Herbal Nerd Society.
I appreciate them because they keep us on our toes and they make me a better web person. I get that all the time. So
They make me smile.
You know,
They
and they help us.
smile.
They support this, which in turn supports us to do this. So
Yeah.
it's a nice,
It's
give and take.
It's our little exclusive club that we have that is $4.99 a month, and you get exclusive articles. People have said several times, "Well, I tried to read your article, but it said I had to be a member." Like that one did, yeah. So you might want to become a member, sweetheart, because clearly you know what you're missing here, don't you?
Yeah.
So, but that helps us pay our bills, and it's a really cheap way to get an herbal education. I can tell you that. You ain't gonna get that somewhere else.
Too right.
Yep.
Too right.
All right. And Hunter Creation, graphic design and website designers, putting your marketing ideas to life, whether that's business cards or brochures or a rockin' new website. They can help you out. Contact them at huntercreation.com. Get Healthy Now with Candace.
Get Healthy Now with Candace is my clinical herbal practice. I work with folks near and far. I can do distance consults using Zoom meetings. Zoom meetings. And if you're looking for help and inspiration and would like to get healthy, give me a call.
Right on.
All right. Occupy Medical.
Occupy Medical is an integrated health free clinic right here in Lane County, Oregon. We are a 501c3, and we are located at 1717 Centennial Suites 4 and 7. And you can donate to us any time because we are we'll give you a tax receipt, and check us out at occupy-medical.org.
Ace High Heat Graphics, custom and printed t-shirts or hats, any kind of apparel. You want to put your logo or message on something for your group or organization, they can help you out. Contact them at acehighheatgraphics.com. And Sierra Lupe Herbal Consulting
is my own little herbal thing. And I also do distance and in-tone consulting. And my specialty is on chronic illnesses. And I work with medication. And it's just kind of fun to do. So that's what I do. There you have it. So how do you get a hold of me? You go Sierra Lupe Herbal Consulting at gmail.com.
All right. Don't forget that we're on the social networks. We're on Facebook. We are on Instagram.
Yes.
We had the hashtag The Back to Herbalist. Plus, we already have an Instagram page as well. I believe we are on the Twitter.
We are
on the Twitter.
We are the Twitterist.
Yes. We are on Twitter as well. So if you want to reach out to us, we are there, and we will join in conversations. I know, Sue, you're really active on Facebook. If you like the podcast and have been a long-time listener or a first-time listener and really like it, nothing helps us out better than a review.
Yes, please send us a review.
We would love to hear more. All right, with all that, it's time for the show. Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 176. Why must we, herbalists, go so far out of our ways to visit our plant allies in their native habitat? Why not just read up on the herbs we love and give them a try? Those are powerful questions that point right at one key aspect of what it makes an herbalist an herbalist. Today we're talking about the ways connecting with nature feeds our souls and our practice. Now here are your hosts, Candace Hunter and Sue Sierra Lupe.
I'm Candace Hunter.
And I'm Sue Sierra Lupe.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. Oh, spring is almost upon us.
Yes, things are kind of
the hope of spring is upon us.
The hope of spring.
The hope of spring is upon us, and I have been reading my gardening books.
Oh, good. That's what you do.
Yes.
That's what you do when things are cold and wet.
Well, you pointed me toward Rico Check, who does the strictly medicinal seeds.
Yep.
And he's great.
Yeah.
I love their seed catalog.
It's a big ball of fun.
I wish I knew him. I don't know. But I could tell from the reading of the book that I'm working on, The Medicinal Herb Grower by Rico Check, that he has got to be a big ball of fun. So I was reading a section in there where he's talking about the importance of getting into nature to observe the plants in, the way that they're growing. And he says, quote, "Nobody gardens like Mother Earth. Watching carefully, you can learn directly from the plants," end quote. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to talk more about you can learn how the plants grow. But I thought as I read that like 3 times. And I was like, that's powerful, because it isn't just how the plants grow that you can learn from watching carefully. There's so much more.
Yeah, the relationship that they have between. I've been to his workshops before, and he talks quite a bit about how the plants grow together and when they're on their own, the kind of influences they have on people, how they walk around the plants and how they influence each other in their own natural environment. And I am always fascinated by the tales that he tells. It's pretty cool. I know that when I first started doing plant medicine, I was very interested in the traditional approaches, and I really loved the ethnobotany. And I have a reverence for the natural world that is part of my own spiritual development. And it occurred to me that I definitely should know more about nature if I revere it.
Right.
So that went throwing me down the path of science.
Purely logical.
Yes, it is. Well, that's what I tried in. But yeah, I felt when I get puzzled by things, taking them in the place where they naturally are, it answers so many questions.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I was reading Stephen Herod Buhner's book, I think it's called Sacred Plant Medicine.
Okay.
I think that was what it was called.
If that's incorrect.
Yeah, Sacred Plant Medicine.
Yeah.
But I was reading that not that long ago, and there's a point where he talks about the difference between domesticated plants versus wild plants, and how there's this really amazing energy that flows through the wild plants that doesn't necessarily flow through domesticated versions. And that he relates a story about a place where he was living. I can't remember which farm or which place it was, but it's a natural place where he was living, and he had planted fruit trees and was all excited that the fruit trees would be growing. This would be great. And the fruit trees just struggled to survive. Well, all the natural trees, all the wild trees and things, everything that was just there was growing wild and happy as a clam, and towering over the fruit trees, even things that have been planted afterwards. And he talks about the importance of recognizing that, domesticated plants don't necessarily have the same energy that the wild versions do.
Right, sure. A friend of mine, when she moved to the West Coast from the East Coast, was blown away by the rhododendrons that we have here, because her mother had this rhododendron that she coaxed and nurtured and pampered for years, trying to get just one flower would be great. And we're driving through the coastal range, and
they're all over the place.
They're everywhere, and they're
huge.
tall, and they're healthy, and
they're like trees almost.
Yeah, and they're strong because the wind is battering against them, but the soil is what they need and what makes them happy. So when you're talking about the energy of it, I guess that's what you're describing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I entirely fully agree with Stephen's, assessment in that little section of the book. And I don't know if he would still fully agree. Who knows? The book was written a long time ago. But I think that domestic plants can be really quite strong, but they also often do require different types of attending, because we're taking them out of their native space and putting them into a different environment with a different climate and different companions. And I think that Rico has probably found the way to cultivate plants in a way that they have that wild, incredible energy that wild plants can have, because he's listening to how are they growing in the wild. Let's replicate that for them.
Right. Well, that could be it. There is something to see a plant in its natural environment. I mean, going down south and seeing some of those fabulous plants that we grow as house plants.
Right.
And then coming back and looking at my own house plant that I saw its cousin, that was huge and
lush
and just
vibrant,
going crazy, and then this little tiny struggling. It's
Yeah.
like 5 years old. And
Yeah.
it's like Tiny Tim on Christmas,
Right.
You know? So that
Yeah.
I don't have any problems nurturing plants in adopted settings,
Right.
but it is its own issue. And even when they're healthy and happy in different settings that they're not naturally in, or, you know, you're trying to take a hot plant and put it in a cold area, then that's still challenging for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like you see people that some people do really, really well in the, you know, frozen tundra of the north, and other people just do not.
Right.
And the people who do not typically do really, really well in other climates, whereas those northerners, when they go to other climates, aren't quite as healthy and happy as they thought they would be.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, not everybody that leaves Minnesota for Florida thinking Florida is going to be so warm and wonderful and it'll be great actually stays. Some of them go back to Minnesota because they realize that they were healthier and happier in their native environment,
Right.
which happens to be really, really cold
Yeah. I have
in the winter.
I have a hard time with cold. It gets cold here to me, and y'all just think, no, it's not.
No,
cold
we're
at
just
all.
wearing flannel. We're like, it's just not even cold enough to put a proper jacket on.
Right.
You know, I'm still wearing my sandals all winter, even in the snow, because I can.
Right.
Although, if we were to go back, it would be very intolerable cold.
That's true, because you've acclimated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't have absolutely no desire to see freezing temperatures again for the rest of my life.
You've had your
fine
fill.
with that. I don't need those. I'm good.
Yeah. The thing that I really like about getting into the natural world as an herbalist is that I work in a clinic that is it's pretty hard line as far as the sorts of people that we work with.
A lot of your clientele actually really kind of live in the wild, even though it's in the city.
Oh gosh,
There's no reason. I mean,
the American caste system infuriates me beyond. But I see some heavy stuff, and sometimes we have fabulous successes, and sometimes we lose people, and it just hurts. You know, there are times at the end of the day I think, okay, I am going to get in my car without throwing up, and that's the big accomplishment I'm going to do today. Yay, me.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why I take hikes a couple of times a week.
Well, that's for you. That's like forest bathing, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
that's exactly what
you had
is.
a really good quote from a doctor who talked about forest bathing.
Yep.
And I can't remember the name of the doctor, but he talked about how people in Japan have they have experts in forest bathing because it's so healing. It's so deeply healing.
Yeah, that's you can be a guide, a forest bathing guide. Like they can certify you to do that, which would be fabulous.
Yeah,
so you just take people in there into the woods, and you're teaching them how to meander.
Right, I can do that.
But there, you know,
That
if you're
sounds
in a foreign environment, then you don't react to things in a knowing way. You're just shocked. Like for a country
People
person
get
like
upset.
myself to go to a big city like New York, be staring up at the buildings and you know, all the smells and the sounds and everything would just freak me out, and I wouldn't really know what I was looking at. I don't have the context.
Right.
So teaching someone to have context in the forest, that's when you can really absorb and learn things and be comforted.
Yeah. People who aren't used to the wild, like out of the city in the non-cultivated areas, they can get really frightened really easily.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and they can lose their sense of direction really easily.
Oh, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
take
not
a couple of greenhorns mushroom hunting.
Which I did once.
Yep.
And lost one of them in the woods.
Oh.
And eventually found him. And the whole time the crows were laughing at me because they knew exactly where he was. And he was actually like maybe quarter mile from us. So, you know, not that far away.
Right. But your nose is to the ground.
Well, and because of the hill structure.
Oh, yeah.
We
up
couldn't
and down.
hear each other. So
echoes.
Yeah. So he and his daughter eventually, I think, what was it, a couple hours later, Patrick?
Yeah, about 3.
About 3 hours later,
goodness.
we reconnected. the whole time I could hear the crows were shouting and laughing the whole time. They
Mhm.
thought it was just hilarious.
Yeah, very funny.
And his, poor wife at the time, she just was like freaking out. She was getting so upset.
Oh, sure.
And I can understand. I mean, I understood why she was getting upset, but the whole entire time I was listening to the forest, and the forest was saying, "It's all good. It's all good. He's
Mhm.
having the adventure he needs to have, so let him be."
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, well, I guess we'll just see what happens.
Mhm.
And, ultimately it all worked out okay.
Mhm.
I can only assume that their family had the experience they needed to have for whatever reason they needed to have it. But that was definitely a freak out moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It would make me ill at ease. If it was just my husband or an adult friend,
Mm-hmm.
it would not be as upsetting. But when you've got a child there, then
Yeah.
you have committed when you are with a child to take care of them.
Right.
It is your job, whether that's your relative or not.
Right.
And so that it really kind of makes it horrific. And of course, when you take new people to the West Coast where we live and take them on little tours of the woods, then you always hear I think is there cougars out here?
Yeah, there's cougars.
There's a Sasquatch.
Sasquatch.
There is a
Sasquatch. They're just like all the least likely scenarios.
Right.
Yeah. Just that's what's going to happen now.
Right. You're like, no, it's not going to happen.
We could drown, or we could. All of those things are possible. Absolutely, and have happened. But most likely, we're just going to walk through the woods and I'll talk incessantly about plants. Yeah. That's probably the punishment that you're going to be going through.
Right.
Is the never-ending fountain of plant information.
Yes. So true. So as herbalists, it's important for us to get into the woods just to heal ourselves, because what we do.
Yep.
And just like all healers, I mean, honestly, every single person in any kind of healing or caregiving profession probably needs to get into the woods.
Yep.
Every day.
Yeah.
At least once a week.
Yeah.
Probably. But as herbalists, it's particularly important for us to do that.
Yeah, because that's our medicine right there.
Right.
So, you want to be in the pharmacy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Mother Nature right there.
Right there, and see how they work together. But also the plants themselves, they give off volatile oils.
And they teach us. I mean, they teach us, like Rico's talking about, you learn by observing them. Mm-hmm. And they teach us how they can help us. They teach us how to use them, as it were, to help people, other people. I
find that, you and I were talking earlier, that I was studying one of I think it was alder it was birch. Sorry. It was birch for its analgesic properties. Mm-hmm. And I was in the area where there was a number of birch. And then I looked over and said, oh, wait, there's another tree that has analgesic properties. And there's another, it's all in this riparian area. Yes. So, okay. So that's what happens is they make these volatile oils or these alkaloids or whatever to deal with the environment. They're not centered around us.
Yes. And they share the information. So Birch is chatting to the various other friends in the area. Oh, this worked for me last season. And everybody's like, oh, well, let's give it a try. And next thing you know, that becomes a common constituent because it's a common defense for everybody in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I would label that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the fabulous piece about all of that is realizing, if they have to make this particular alkaloid or something like it in order to survive, then perhaps some of these other plants would have similar properties as well.
Right.
So, for instance, if you're in a desert situation, you look around and the smells are completely different, and having to protect yourself from that hot, the heat and the wind and everything, your plant body just has to be completely different, and you have to have different types of concentrations of chemicals.
Yeah.
So, it's easier to think about why Lariat creosote bush, as it's called, would be so compacted with all of these volatile oils that are antibacterial, because that's some hardcore stuff out there.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, as you said before, it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And the smells of them, for instance, out here, we are so lucky because we have cottonwoods, which I know, allergy central, but they're little buds, the balm of Gilead.
Yeah, I love that. I love that stuff.
It just smells like heaven. When you smell it, you kind of soften a bit.
You relax.
Yeah, you relax.
It's very relaxing.
You know, I always feel like I'm in a really good mood. And I know that smell of those volatile oils, it has an effect on me personally, and it helps me stave off infections. Those are antimicrobial oils, and I breathe it into my body, and that helps my NK cells as well do a job of keeping my immune system going.
Yep.
And my endocrine system too, of course. But yeah, I think that's just breathing it is just as important as seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at like a traditional herbalist perspective, the cottonwoods, at least in our area, like to grow near waterways.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And they're very good at handling the damp conditions that are also create where, colds and flus thrive and those
infections.
And infections thrive. And cottonwoods are very good at handling those and dealing with that kind of conditions. So it makes sense that it would do well for humans that have damp conditions they're dealing with. So in our area in the spring, people are a little bit worn down from the long, cold, damp winter we've had.
Yep.
And
they've been in their caves too long. They're starting to get punchy.
Yep, exactly. So, drawing on cottonwood makes sense at that point of the year. And then for folks later in the year who just have damp constitutions, a traditional herbalist might very well say, cottonwood would be a good one to help someone who's getting infections and has a lowered immune system and is always like has a damp constitution, has a lot of phlegm, has a lot of wateriness about them. Cottonwood would be one that you would use.
Yeah. Well, even if it's not a forest, at this time of year, which is the early spring, late winter, I guess from wishy type of year that we're recording this in, then we have plants in our garden too that are very healing. And it's, I think, exceptionally important for herbalists to pay attention to those plants that are around them. I have 2 huge winter daphnes outside my front door. So get out of the car and trot through the front gate. And it always hits me before I think it will. That smell of the daphne. Yeah. And I brought a couple of branches inside and on the dining room table, and it's been sitting in an enclosed environment for a long time. So open the door and hang up my coat, and whoa, what is that? Oh, you know what that is, girl.
Right.
That's right. That daphne just giving out all those beautiful smells. And it's wonderful. It's calming, and it's little pink blossoms with the 4 petals. They're exceptional. But that's still, I picked it when it's covered in snow.
Nice. Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us, regardless of whether your approach is more on the traditional side or more on the scientific side, it's important to get out and observe the plants, because they truly are our first teachers. I mean, they should be. So that's why you don't just read up on them and try them out.
Yep.
I mean, you can, but you won't be as effective.
Right.
And the connection won't be as good.
Yeah.
I've noticed that the plants that I work with that I've gotten to know personally, I tend to make better medicine with them than the ones that I don't know as well.
They're your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I was trotting around today, in fact, and I actually found a blooming dandelion. It was amazing. Blooming dandelion now. We just had snow not too long ago, and there's forecasts of it coming up again. I do not know what could possibly be pollinating that poor little dandelion, but there it is.
Gonna do it anyway.
And the poor little stalk was probably the size of my first joint of my finger.
Nice.
Very tiny.
Super short.
Here I am. It was pretty funny.
Nice. Yeah. So if you don't have access to actual forests and uncultivated areas, you can still get outside and just observe the plants that are right in your neighborhood.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, the dandelion growing up through the cracks that's nature, you know?
Yep. And the plants that are planted along the edges of roads and all of the weedy weeds that you see all over, those have their own stories to tell, as you would say. And by noticing them, you know, you go beyond the clock on the wall.
Yeah.
You know, that's it helps you notice other things about people that you're tasked with assisting in their healing.
Right.
So the little details of that plants show, human beings have all of these tells as well.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so it's the scent of someone that is ill, or the look the color of their petals.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. The color of their complexion, the color of their tongue, the color of their fingernails.
Yep. All of those little pieces are indicators that all healers have to pay attention to.
Yes.
Whether they're herbalists or not. And having a constant look at the plants and what those indicators mean. It's a good thing also, because if you're choosing good plants for medicine, knowing what they look like when they're alive and vibrant helps you understand, oh, well, now I have it in a dried form.
Right.
Is that the smell that I know this plant should be? Or has it been sitting on a shelf for too long?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And there is a definite difference between the plants in the wild and the plants in a garden.
Yes, there definitely is.
Yeah. The plant, like rosemary, some of these plants, if you put them in a garden situation, you water them a bunch, they are not going to have a good smell to them.
Right.
They don't have to defend themselves.
And then again, if they end up in my yard, they don't get watered at all because I forget.
Right.
And then they have a really potent smell.
A very potent smell.
Because they're struggling to survive.
Yeah. My rosemary is on the side of the driveway. I had put that along the house because our neighbor had a whole bunch of cats. The one that had like 20 cats, remember?
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah. So we had a gravel driveway, which the cat said, "Oh, that is the biggest litter box I have ever seen."
Yeah. Awesome.
So I put the rosemary and the lavender alternating plants along the side there to discourage them.
Yes.
And it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
It worked great. And you know, we've been there 20 years, and lavender doesn't live as long as rosemary. So the lavender is kind of faded out, and now it's a huge rosemary sage bush with this
nice
sprawling rose in between that keeps trying to eat the porch.
Right.
But it still does its job.
It's doing what it needs to do. Yeah.
It still does its job. It keeps cat poop from accumulating in places that we want to stroll. And they don't have to be watered. And boy, on a hot day, the bees buzzing around them on the flowers, and you can see I swear you can see the scent in the air, you know, because it's so heavy and heady.
Yeah.
So it's like it cuts the air a bit.
Yeah.
It makes a bit of a warble, and it's a wonderful way to start.
Oh, yeah.
So if I'm given any of those plants to somebody, I am confident that is the healing is going to happen. It's strong. It's medicinal strength.
Well, and in the space that you have it sort of mimics the rocky hillsides of the Mediterranean where they grow wild.
Very true.
So the soil is not necessarily super awesome, but it's not terrible. It's not like you planted them in, you know, something with no nutrients, but it's not a rich soil.
Yeah.
And it's rocky and it's right on the edge of things. So they're going to get more sun and being brushed by, you know, people going by and that sort of thing, you know. They'll get more aggravation. Yeah. They're more aggravated.
They gotta make more of those chemicals to protect themselves. And the side of my house, I had a giant 2-story house, turn of the century style, and that is white on that side, so it reflects all that heat right onto those rosemary plants.
Bakes them.
Yes,
takes them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what Rico Check is talking about is observe the plants in nature and then replicate those conditions in your environment.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, find the right spot. Don't put your rosemary in the shade garden. That's
Right.
probably not going to be awesome for
That
it.
ain't going to work.
And don't put it right next to the tomatoes because you've got to water tomatoes all the time.
Yeah, you do.
So you could, it's not like rosemary won't grow there, but it's not going to produce the best, most flavorful and strongest rosemary next to the tomatoes because it'll be overwatered.
Yeah.
Find a nice rocky edge spot, give it a watering when you think about it. And if you miss a few times, it'll probably be okay.
Yeah. I think one of the things that being a good gardener or learning to be a good gardener and being a good herbalist, the thing that has in common is that you are paying attention to energy and stories that are not your own.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's vital in healing other people.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's vital in healing other people, and it's vital in learning how to grow people or plants, how to help them thrive.
Yep.
And yeah.
For some reason, it makes me remember one gentleman that came to our clinic that he was having a rotten, very bad day, and he was unhoused, and he's an unhoused person that had been on the streets for so long that his body was much older than it should have been.
Right.
So we were sorry, we were talking, and he just felt so safe in the place that we had set up there. He'd been fed and people would check in and on him, and we're just sitting on the park bench chatting after he had just gotten back from talking to the doctor. And he said, I would like to pray with you if I could. My first instinct was like, oh no, sweetheart, that ain't my song.
Right.
No, but it was what he needed.
Yeah, it wasn't about you.
Yep,
So
exactly. So I held his hand and he prayed, and he said, if you'd like to say a few words, you may. Like, I would like to say that you are a very good human being and I wish you well. He's like, that's a wonderful prayer. That was what he needed. Yeah. So yeah, and that same thing with the plants. They got their little things that they like, and yeah, it's magical to be in that place that's not centered around your own little head.
It is really. Life is so full of so many wonderful stories, and most of them, in my opinion, are far more interesting than my own. So I'd rather listen to other people's stories, and I'd rather listen to the stories of the forest and the plants and the birds and the bees and everybody else, because it's more interesting.
Yeah. I tried to pull myself out of and my interpretations out when I'm walking in the woods to recover. Yeah. As I'm a very heady kind of person, I guess. And so I'll be trotting around and go, oh, this plant is growing here, and I bet it's got this constituent, this kind of right? Which is great. That's super fun because I take people on herb walks.
Yeah, it's a great herb walk.
Supposed to do. But if I've just had one of those rotten, horrible days, then learning to turn off that part of my brain and just walk.
And just be.
Yep. And just look at the shapes of the leaves and touch the cedar needles, the cedar branches, and smell them, and allowing my five senses that are physical. Yeah. No, not the other senses, but just those physical ones to harvest all of the beauty around me.
Yeah. That's so deeply healing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I have to admit that I don't go into the woods as much as I would like. And part of it is because there's a lot of busyness in my life and all of that. But truly, I could make the time. And it's not like I live that far from nature walk opportunities. But one of the things that I've found is that I feel like my heart is breaking every time I have to come back home to the city.
Oh, gosh.
It's just this, it's heart-wrenching. And it's when I go out, like when we go mushrooming, most of the time, all of that sciencey stuff, all the names of constituents, even the Latin names of plants, all of that information just falls away. And I'm just there. And it's such a wonderful experience.
Yep.
And a lot of times I move into a place where there are no words, and I'm fine with that because I'd rather just be there. I mean, there was one time where I was out mushrooming and I heard the call of the truffles, and I went and dug up truffles because I knew exactly where they were, just because I was listening to what the forest was telling me. And I didn't even know what they were when I dug them up, and then I brought them home, and Patrick's like, "Oh, those are truffles." I'm like, "Really? Cool." And I had hoped, I mean, it was a time where I had been hoping that I would have an opportunity to actually see what a truffle was for real, that wasn't like already in an oil or in some food someone had made.
Right.
And so the forest offered that up to me, and it was such a gift. And there were absolutely no words while I was doing it. The whole entire experience was beyond words. It was just being.
Well, that feeling of grief when you leave that setting, I wonder if you would still feel that if you were in the woods more often.
I don't know. I don't know if I would or not. I'd have to actually get out doing it. I mean, I'd have to do it every day.
Yeah.
And I've contemplated trying to do that, or at least trying to get, at some point maybe move into the woods or move closer to the woods than I am now. But I haven't figured out what to do about that or how to fix that. So,
yeah. Well, we've got lots of opportunities, and you're young, you have your health.
Yeah, and I mean, I do get out into my garden. It's not like I'm not getting into nature at all. It's just leaving the city is such a relief, and then coming back is not as fun for me. But I also feel like I'm supposed to be here. I need to be here in the city for now, doing what I'm doing. So I'm doing the best I can. But
Sure.
But yeah, there's a certain amount of, there's like heartbreak and grief every single time I leave the woods.
Yeah, I know when I was younger, the times when I'd go hiking, it would be like a big deal. And, this month I'm gonna do this, and I've got my backpack, and I've got my blah 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 blah, and now it's just I'm gonna jam shit in my I'm gonna jam stuff in my purse, and I always have snacks in my car, and so it just happens. That's just what I do when I really think about it.
You're at a point in your life where you've got a lot more independence than I have, because I'm still dealing with, child and husband and businesses and lots of entanglements that eventually won't probably be as weighty as they are right now. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the reasons why I go out so often, that it allows me to get through all the weighty stuff that I have in my own life. Because I jump away, and I know in my head I should not be just going out on my own without people knowing where I am, but I do it anyway.
Well, and it's not
which is not very safe.
Well, but most of the places that you go to aren't so deep into the woods that there really are going to be cougars hunting you down.
I got cell service.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think you're pretty safe doing what you do, and it's really deeply healing. So.
It's always good to tell. Have somebody know that you're, at least what direction you're wandering.
Right. Yeah. It probably is, but.
Yeah. But it's not likely that is going to change for me.
No. No, I think you're going to keep doing what you do when you feel like doing it, and not bothering to get permission.
Yeah. I've got a little feral streak in me that rears its ugly head once in a while.
Little.
Okay. A large heart. Yeah. Okay.
And once in a while. Let's change that to most of the time.
All right.
It's admirable.
Okay. Now everybody knows.
Harsh.
Oh, that's all right. I'm living with it. I make it look good.
You do. Actually, you do make it look quite good.
Go. Yeah. So, in summary, I think you already brought up how healing just for our psyche it is, and how healing is for our body, and what I forgot to mention was, and now that we're wrapping it all up, is that we have charted with people that go in, their systolic part of their blood pressure goes down.
Yes, yeah.
And wandering through. So it's a physically an effect on us, as well as for our immune system and our endocrine system, and our attention to the plants and how they work, all the teaching that they have to offer, and the connections that we can make that we wouldn't have necessarily made in an academic setting, like in a book or a website or something. Not a podcast. Podcast is totally different.
That's great connections here.
But all of those pieces together, that's why we put the show together, just to really encourage herbalists out there, get outside.
Yeah, get outside. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, we share the bulk of our DNA with the plant world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have the same DNA we do.
Yeah.
It's like 60% or something. I read that recently. I think it was in the Julia Graves book, but I'm not sure. The Language of Plants. I think it was in that book. But either way, we share a lot of DNA with the plants. We should probably get to know them.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people think it's important to visit their family reunions.
Sure.
So why shouldn't we also be doing that with the rest of our family?
That's very true. Yep. Well,
until then,
put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.